Uncensored, no holds barred talk. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This is the Global Reality Radio Network. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live edition of the Global Reality right here on the Global Reality Radio Network. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. Thanks for being with us here for another late-night Moonbat edition of the broadcast. Special shorter show for you here tonight, Friday night edition of the broadcast. And we're going to not do any... We're going to be doing any news or anything like that tonight. We're just going to stick to the reading, our series of reading The Lost Worlds of Ancient America. And since this is we're really where I'm at right now with my research, I really have been enjoying this read so far, and I know a lot of you have as well. And so I figured in lieu of just... because I really wasn't going to do a show tonight. Honestly, I was like looking around. I was like, I'm just not going to do a show tonight. But, you know how it goes. And I was like, well, I kind of actually want to do a show. It's funny how that works, you know. Sometimes you don't want to do it, and there's, you know, plenty of material. Not very often, but often if you wanted, then you want to do it, there won't be anything to cover. So I figured I'd do like an hour here tonight or so. We got a couple of chapters, kind of scrolling forward and looking. Some of these chapters are really short, so I figure we might be able to knock out a few chapters here tonight and get into some interesting stuff, and at least have a live show. And another show for the archives this week and have 5. So what do you say? How about that? Let's do it. TheGlobalReality.com is my website. That's TheGlobalReality.com. Next week is our fundraising week at TheGlobalReality.com to pay the bills for the month and stay afloat. And, you know, with this news from what's going on with these not one but 2 different TV shows now that they want me involved with, things are starting to look up. So... You know, I just, all you out there that have supported me up to this point have been the only reason this has happened. Period. End of story. So it's kind of a cool thing to kind of, you know, to see a return on what you've donated, you know. I mean, this is huge. It's going to be really huge. But we have, see, about 700, about 750, give or take, or so. If we could get like 600 of that in by Thursday, or before Thursday, sooner the better, we'll be set on operating costs for the month, and we'll be good to go and continue to push ahead here. But yeah, I'm very excited. I mean, this is great news for my work. It's great news for me in general, and it's just not something I ever expected, you know. But I don't know. I mean, it's not just. It's just seeming like it's not just. I don't know, man. You know, I'm a pretty good judge of things. From what I mean, the way she's talking, I mean, this stuff sounds like it's, you know, kind of a foregone conclusion. Just waiting, you know, wait for paperwork and stuff to go through. We've got to fill out these. This release. So I'm kind of, you know, I'm kind of playing my own lawyer over here. I'm having to go through this. You know, I don't sign anything unless I read the fine print. That's just the way it is. But anyway, theglobalreality.com, please help us out there, and also help us out with the film budget, too, whichever one of those you want to help us with. But the most important thing right now is we get the bills paid. Theglobalreality.com is where you do that at. Really, it was kind of slow this week. We got a little bit of help on the film budget, but not much else other than that. And we definitely need at least another $200 this week, so please help out if you can. That's all I'm asking. It's been real slim lately. And I'm starting to reach the finish line here. I'm starting to reach a point where this is all going to be very big. So this is, it's more important right now that I have your support than it is any other time. Because, who knows how long it's going to be before I'll even see any money from this TV thing, But the fact of the matter is, if it's starting to happen, and it indeed looks like it is, you're going to be able to say you had a hand in me helping me get there, and all of you have. That's a fact. Chapter 8: Prehistoric Mooring Stones of Florida. As a final point of departure for freighters carrying copper from North America, Florida would have offered an accommodating supplies location used by Bronze Age sailors before setting out on their long transatlantic return voyages to Europe and the Near East. Accordingly, evidence of ancient docking facilities on the east coast of the Sunshine State tends to confirm the presence of oceanic mariners there more than 3,000 years ago. The original Garden of Eden was located on the east coast of Florida, according to John Saxer, a longtime resident of Tarpon Springs. His novel conclusion is an eclectic interpretation of biblical and classical Greek myth applied to a number of local coral. Some feature unusual holes that he believes are evidence of their use in Old Testament times as sea anchors by sailors from the ancient world. Yeah, they found anchors from ancient China on the West Coast, California. If Mr. Saxer's belief in a Floridian Garden of Eden was a bit much, the drilled coral he mentioned seemed to merit investigation. For assistance, I contacted William Donato, a well-known researcher familiar with the Atlantic Ocean archaeology. He was unsure about the existence of any sea anchors in Tarpon Springs, but admitted the unusually perforated coral blocks nonetheless bore some affinity with smaller examples he encountered in the Bahamas. A quick internet search revealed that stone anchors were indeed employed from prehistoric times by a variety of cultures well into the 13th century A.D. Saxer was sure his specimens were much older. Arriving in Tarpon Springs, he was kind enough to show me his coral anchors, although at first sight nothing seemed unnatural about them. They were curiously grouped in regular clusters, making it difficult to know with certainty if they had been so arranged sometime in the historic past or occupied their present position since pre-Columbian times. Driving north on alternate US 19 to Newport Richey, Saxer took me to several genuinely impressive monoliths that more resembled real sea anchors. We visited 4 sites of large standing stones with well-worn holes that had been obviously drilled through. The area is known for its sponge harvesting, fishing, and boat building, but local inquiry into these occupations was unable to connect them in any way to the perforated coral formations. The closer I scrutinized them, however, the more they resembled not anchors, but mooring stones. As a sailor and a boater, I imagine the difficulty in handling these ponderous, uneven stones as anchors. Saxer argued that larger anchors were needed for bigger ships. He then drove us to another site in downtown Port Richey, near a waterfront marina. Enclosed by a wire fence stood a defunct restaurant destined for demolition. Visible from the gate of the fence, about 20 feet away, was a large monolith bearing 2 carved faces. Their appearance was a real surprise because they were by no means modern, suggesting, on the contrary, extreme age. Stylistic execution, weathering, and depositation all strongly implied their pre-Columbian provenance. To be sure, the immediate vicinity had been the site of a prehistoric habitation, providing a suitably ancient cultural context for the 2 carved countenances. Some months after my first encounter with the engraved monolith, Donato was able to visit one of the Flora coral sea anchors himself, a 4 by 5 foot rock, 18 inches thick, featuring a symmetrical hole. It's possibly a modified rock, an anchor with multiple rope groves, he told Stephen Isbitz of the Tampa Tribune. Turning to another massive stone with two holes, both 17 inches in diameter, Donato stated, "The size is astounding, far bigger than anything I've seen. The identical diameter and uniformity of either hole argue that they were artificially drilled through the rock. It may have been a mooring stone. If so, then whose ships were moored to them and when? Answers may be found among the 5,000 pit mines dug out of Michigan's Upper Peninsula from 5,000 to nearly 3,000 years ago. Archaeologists have known since the late 18th century that some 500 million pounds of the world's highest grade copper was excavated by light-skinned foreigners who Native American Menominee oral traditions describe as the Marine Men." Yeah, there they are. There's our boys again. Amorites. Arriving from across the Atlantic Ocean. Coincidental with the Upper Great Lakes massive mining operation and the disappearance of its extracted minerals was the ancient Old World Bronze Age. This epoch would not have been possible without prodigious amounts of high-grade copper fused with zinc and tin, insufficiently available in Europe and the Near East. If Michigan copper was traded on a transatlantic basis, smaller ships coming down the Mississippi River to meet up with larger ocean-going cargo ships could have had a rendezvous point in western Florida. There, they could have taken aboard the last supplies of food, fresh water, before their next landfall on the western European shores. Although those vessels, having been constructed of perishable materials, long ago decayed into nothing, the Upper Peninsula's prehistoric pit mines still exist, as do the uniformly drilled holes in coastal Florida's coral formations and their nearby monolith. Well, look, I mean, I know for a fact now, this is unbelievable. I just completely forgot about this till now. I know for a fact that these are the Amorite boys that I'm on the trail of already, because I have a clip in the film that's from a TV show where it's all these different clips from back in the 80s. They were doing a construction site or something, but it was in a bog, in a marsh. But see, it wouldn't have been a bog and a marsh when it was built. Who's going to dig graves underwater and bury people underwater, right? They didn't do that. Just like in southern Alabama, is a location I hope to get to go to sometime. It's near Mobile on the coast, and it's a fucking mound in the middle of a swamp. And if you saw it, you would just think it was like a little island or something, but it's actually a mound. It's because it was built before. It was actually not in the middle of a swamp. I think it's like in the middle of a river, a swamp or something, but built long before that. But they found massive mass graves in Florida, on the East Florida coast. Sorry, get my east and my west backwards now. I'm sorry. On the West Florida coast, massive mass graves of these red-headed giants yet again. So this with the anchors and the evidence with the copper mining, that's what the ancient texts talk about too. That these Amorites were they were mining copper from Michigan, taking it back to the Middle East, and when they ran out of Mesopotamia, they fled to the location where their copper mines were. And that's when they started getting their freak on with the savages. And this is how you had. I mean, you ever think of why you had different tribes? Why were there different Native American tribes? What was the thing? It was about bloodlines. That's what it stemmed from. And so each one of the tribes were stemmed from the offspring of one of these original Amorites, who, again, got their fuck on with these already existing Native American, quote-unquote, savages, as they called them. That's how the tribes were distinguished. It's no secret that all of these in North America all worship the feathered serpent. It says that perhaps its engraved human faces were rough portraits of the Marine men, seafaring copper workers on their way to and from the mines that drove the Bronze Age on the other side of the world. All right, that's the end of Chapter 8. Chapter 9, Ice Mummy of the Andes. Preserved along with the physical remains of a young girl sacrificed atop a high volcano in the Andes mountain was her long-kept secret of the Inca people. Pat Schoenard, blah, blah, blah. In early autumn 1995, Dr. Johann Reinhardt led a team of fellow archaeologists to Peru's Ampato volcano. At its high, barren, and remote summit, they made a most unusual discovery. Referred to as the Inca Ice Maiden, it was the mummy of an apparent sacrificial victim sometime during the mid-15th century AD. In life, she climbed the mountain, perhaps already inebriated from chica, which was Inca beer, and hallucinogens. She tumbled. No, you gotta get your, everybody knows that you gotta get your sacrifice liquored up and fucked up on, peyote or mushrooms or some shit or acid before you take them off and sacrifice them off the side of the mountain. I mean, come on. That's just sacrifice 101. It has been since time immemorial. Everybody knows that. You're going to take a bitch on the mountain and try to, get freaky with her. You're going to have to get her on some fucking, Incan beer and some hallucinogens. It's just the way it is. I mean, she fell. That's her fault. She shouldn't have been drunk. She stumbled, hardly able to move, with the breath-piercing cold and the thin air slowly suffocating her. Yet she was not alone. A pompous procession of robed priests and crowned nobility marched beside her. They were wrapped in rich, colorful textiles, decorated with gold jewelry, and wore sandals strapped with bronze and silver. This girl was much more than a victim of her own feeble constitution. However, she was not to be ritually sacrificed to an unknown god. The parents of such chosen offerings were given concessions and special gifts by the priesthood. Oh, that's nice. There's some nice parting gifts for you. Oh, don't mind the pun there. Parting gifts. Too bad you won't be around to enjoy those parting gifts. But, hey, your family will. They'll be happy. They'll be short a daughter, but they'll be rich in gifts. That's all that matters, right? This has been going on for the longest time, hasn't it? Nothing new under the sun, buddy. Oh, yeah, we're gonna choose your daughter and sacrifice her, okay? It's an honor, really. No, really it is. Really it is. It's an honor, yes. Look, we're going to give you some concessions here, some nice gifts. We got a couple gift certificates in here for the Olive Garden for you. We've also got an IKEA shopping spree. Yeah. How about that? IKEA, right? Yeah, that's good stuff. We're going to give you a gift stick for that. And, hey, we're going to take your daughter. We're going to fuck her in the ass. I mean, we're going to take her up and sacrifice her on a mountain. Yeah, it's going to be great. So that's nice. They gave them nice gifts. I mean, just give them some material. Who cares? We're taking your daughter to sacrifice her to some god. But, don't worry. We're just going to give you some material possession. That'll replace your flesh and blood daughter, right? Yeah. Hey, what can I get for this rocket launcher down here at the trade-in? They're going to give me some Kroger gift certificates. The children themselves often taken to the Cuzco, the Incan capital, to be paraded through the streets in immense celebrations. This was a rare and sacred method of placating the supernatural powers and ensuring the proper irrigation of crops, the well-being of their emperors, and the sanctity of a royal marriage, or the guarantee of a victory in battle. Indigenous inhabitants of the Andes today believe that the mountains control all aspects of life and death, as did their ancestors half a millennium ago. If the gods were not appeased, the disaster would surely follow. While the priests proclaimed the girl's purity to the gods, she was clothed in a brightly colored death robe and then placed alive in her tomb. After having been sufficiently sedated, the Ice Maiden was bludgeoned on the back of the skull with the heavy, lethal blow of a stone axe for the spiritual protection of the land of the Four Quarters, an empire some 2,500 miles in extent from the Andes in Colombia southward to the dry coastal desert of Chile, to the Amazon in the east. In its geographical scope, the Inca Imperium was among the history's largest empires, and one of the most advanced. Like the Romans, the Inca were superb road builders and architects. At its height, around the turn of the 16th century, the Inca Empire embraced 10 million subjects, all bound by a communal theocratic society with a socialist economic system. Its worshippers practiced mountain worship as the primary basis of their theology. From the moment of birth, Inca children were instilled with a dominating sense of duty and a clarity of religious purpose. An authority on the Incas, William Conklin, writes, the people of the Andes previous to the Incas did worship mountains, but in a different way. They seem to have worshipped mountains from a distance. But the Incas are the ones who got the idea of climbing a ladder to heaven and going up to the top of a mountain and actually engaging in their ritual practices in that spot, which must have been their concept of heaven. No, they're either going and getting picked up by something, maybe a ship or something, or they're going to a spot where they can either go through a portal or a stargate or something of that nature. You know, these guys always say, oh, they were stupid, they were retarded. Yep, they're Indians, they're just dumb. They thought they went up there on that mountain, they're going to get close to heaven because they're up high in the sky. So, you know, that's just how it was back then. They were dumbass savages. Yep, savages. We had that old manifest destiny, though, boy. We got them engines cleaned out. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. They're savages, devoid of any culture, nothing worth saving. But, oh, by the way, they built all these mountains. Yeah, they had great technology. They were smart. Wait, which one is it? Bullshit. Related discoveries made by Dr. Reinhardt on the slopes of Mount Sarasara, not far from the Amparo volcano, revealed additional evidence of child sacrifice. We had waited 4 days for fierce winds and a snowstorm to abate. While encamped in a snow bowl 200 feet below the summit, he told National Geographic Explorer. This was followed by a day and a half of digging. It seemed only fitting, therefore, that Arcadio was the first to shout out that word that caused all of us to stop work instantly. Mummy! I put down my notebook and hurried over to the place where Arcadio was digging. He and his brother Ignacio had uncovered a section of a stone and gravel platform on the most exposed part of the summit. There, more than 5 feet down, was a bundle wrapped in textiles, the frozen body of an Inca ritual sacrifice, a boy about 8 years old. Beside his left arm lay a sling and 2 pairs of sandals, objects presumably intended to accompany him on his journey to the afterlife. The boy and his 2 slaughtered companions predated the Ice Maiden's time and belonged to an earlier culture, the Wari, from which the Incas would borrow much for their own civilization. CAT scans showed that the organs of the 3 Wari children were still intact. Blood was still frozen inside their veins and hearts. Human sacrifices are very rare, Reinhold told National Geographic Explorer, and this one is only about half a dozen, one of only about half a dozen, ever to be excavated scientifically. No other mountain has yielded 4 such victims. Their exceptionally well-preserved remains showed that none of them were typically Indian, but evidence traces of Caucasian features, which were particularly pronounced in the Mount Sarasara remains. Right. They sacrificed these ones. See, this is what I think happened. I think that this recessive Caucasian gene, kind of like the picture I put in the chat room earlier, you guys have probably seen this in the media, the big giant guy, the guy who, poor guy couldn't get any clothes that fit him, and it was going to cost $1,600. But, you know, it's all taken care of now. They put him on TV, and he's going to be taken care of for life. But there's a picture of him standing next to Anderson Vanderbilt, Gay Boy Cooper, and, boy, I mean, the guy could have crushed his head if he wanted to, like a fucking tin can. But that's a recessive gene. And what I think happened is because, I mean, there's no question, man. I mean, hear that there are Caucasians. We're talking about Peru here. All over the place. China, South America, all over the place in North America, all over the place in what is now the United States. Everywhere. And these Caucasian features were the ones that were found sacrificed. Now, what I think is that I think this recessive gene, which tends to come out, sometimes it will come out in boys, right? Sometimes it'll come out in girls. And they were probably used to having these, dark-skinned people there with dark hair. And then every now and again, one would be born that would have, red hair and blue eyes, or red hair and brown eyes, or, blonde hair and blue eyes or something, but have Caucasian features. And, it led these people to believe that this would make the most appropriate sacrifice to appease the gods. The Inca Ice Maiden likewise demonstrated racially anomalous traits, although to a lesser degree. The pre-literate Guarani Indians spoke of the Incas as the White Kings, and a definite physical cleft did indeed exist. The White Kings, my goodness. There's our boys again. My goodness, these boys are all over the place, aren't they? They were busy, busy little beavers. A portrait in Lima's Copacabana monastery of Huayna Capac, the great Inca emperor who consolidated the conquest of his forefathers during the 16th century, represents a man with thoroughly European facial features. A profile in Antonio de Herrera's Chronicle of the Spanish Conquest. Historia shows Huáscar with a similarly un-Indian countenance. A contemporary painting of Huayna Capac's other son, Atahualpa, the last Incan emperor, reveals someone of mixed parentage, suggesting he and Huáscar were only half-brothers, a mix of characteristics evident in the Ice Maiden mummy. Pedro Pizarro, son of the man who conquered the Incan Empire, wrote that the ruling class of the Kingdom of Peru was fair-skinned, with fair hair about the color of ripe wheat. Kind of like my hair. Most of the great lords and ladies looked white, like Spaniards. In that country, I met an Indian woman with her child, both so fair-skinned that they were hardly distinguishable from fair white people. Their fellow countrymen called them children of the gods. Children of the gods. Bum. Tell him what he's won, Johnny. Remember what we talked about the other night that Manhydra had found. Gematria, Elohim equals mounds. I mean, that just says it all for me. Wrap it up, Johnny. Put a bow on it. Send it out the door. It's done. Ding, stick a fork in it. The Inca Ice Maiden and her wary companions were members of this foreign-born elite. And notice how it's always those ones that are always the elites. Just like in China, they were buried mass amount. They had a king or a god's burial. A white Caucasian mummy they found in China buried with like hundreds of pounds of marijuana. The Inca Ice Maiden and her warrior companions were members of this foreign-born elite. Together with their well-preserved remains, is mummified the truth of Andean civilization's vital forgotten connections to overseas visitors from the ancient world. So that's the end of chapter 9. Yeah, we're just blowing through these tonight, aren't we? These are real short. Well, let's continue on here. Chapter 10. Ancient Egyptians sailed to America. 21 golden corn cobs will change everything that has been written about the discovery of America, says anthropologist Gunnar Thompson, Ph.D. He announced the findings of a February 2011 report on Egyptian maize farming by the New World Discovery Institute in Port Townsend, Washington. The 2-year study included Egyptian temples, tombs, and papyrus scrolls, some dating back more than 4,000 years. The Egyptian corn cobs were actually derived from a New World crop plant. They aren't supposed to be in Egypt. See, that's where we start getting into the stuff about like the Anunnaki bringing down food, bringing crops here that weren't indigenous. Because they've proven beyond any shadow of a doubt that, yes, I've heard of this before, that there's evidence of the corn cobs and corn growing that came from a variety that was only in America. The Egyptian corn cobs are actually derived from a New World crop plant, he explains. They aren't supposed to be in Egypt. This is conclusive evidence that Egyptians were farming New World corn thousands of years before Columbus was born. All the modern European historians have claimed that Columbus brought the first Indian corn or maize to the Old World. That's a total mistake that needs to be corrected. A veteran archaeologist, Thompson is no rookie when it comes to solving mysteries, and he is no stranger to controversy. He has solved so many puzzles that Hong Kong celebrity Frank Lee dubbed him the Sherlock Holmes of American history. Most of his new evidence comes from the Temple of Hashmet, in Deir el-Bahari near Thebes. She reigned Egypt as a queen or pharaoh from 1492 to 1458 BC. Thompson's report includes photographs from reputable sources, including the New York Metropolitan Museum of Art and the National Museum of Scotland. According to their study, ancient Egyptian artists included Indian corn cobs, pineapples, and other New World plants in their displays of religious offerings. The Queen's murals coincide with reports that she sent an expedition overseas to a mysterious land called Punt. Thompson suggests a daring connection. Punt must have been located someplace in the Americas. The Egyptians had to sail across the Atlantic Ocean in order to obtain all the New World plants. No, not necessarily. See, I don't agree with that. See, I think that's a wrong way of thinking, too. They're saying that, oh, they had to have... No. That's not what they're saying at all. The reason that there's evidence of that in Egypt does not mean that Egyptians automatically were sailing over there and bringing corn all the way back here. It originated and was brought here in ancient Mesopotamia way before that. And these Amorites that were essentially the Elohim, many people believe they were, these red-haired giants, these are the ones that brought it over there to what they called the New World, the Americas, started growing it there, and then that gives people the impression that, okay, they brought it to Egypt from over there, blah, blah. No, not the case. Not the case. So I have to not agree with this whole. I mean, I'm not even going to finish reading this because this is just crap. I don't agree with this at all. Not one bit, because this is trying to get you to believe this idea and that Egyptian sailed and all that, but I don't know. I'm not buying it. This sounds like a bunch of crap. This guy supposedly they're calling this guy the Sherlock Holmes of ancient history. Please, I knew as soon as I saw that title, I smelled bullshit. I was like, oh god, what kind of fucking disinfo debunker is this? And sure enough, you just hadn't done your homework enough, buddy. You're still and that's a problem with a lot of people, because they still base a lot. They act like they're these edgy researchers, but they're still basing a lot of their opinions and their findings on hidden research, on facts and figures that relate to data, which we all know by now is bullshit in the first place. You see what I mean? You understand where I'm coming from in this? I mean, they're saying, oh well, this and that, right? But you're discounting the fact that somebody else brought that corn to the Americas from the Middle East way farther back in antiquity than we're talking here. The plant's alien pedigree ultimately led to its exclusion from traditional religious art. However, it was a key ingredient in the growth and survival of old-world civilizations. Well, this is why you see there are all kinds of things on buildings in Masonic lodges. I've seen it on Masonic lodges. These Roman-looking heads, they look like giant heads, and they'll always have ears of corn in them. And they look like depictions of gods. And they'll have ears of corn, and you'll see corn in Masonic ceremonies, the corn, wine, and oil. It's the Trinity. Isis, Osiris, Horus. It represents it's a threefold alchemical expression, and by mixing them together, it's symbolic in nature, and they do this in rituals, and they do this when they lay cornerstones on buildings and whatnot. But you always see corn next to what appear to be, carvings or rock art on buildings, Masonic lodges and stuff, where you see these, god-looking figures with, headbands with corn in them. And to me, I've always known that that's what that signified, especially when you read the Sumerian text and it talks about them bringing corn and grain and stuff because there wasn't suitable food here. Just like we talked about the other night, which came first, the chicken or the egg thing. All right, let's get into one more chapter here tonight. Chapter 11, a map of pre-Columbian America. During the spring of 1982, an itinerant woodworker, an amateur treasure hunter in southeastern Illinois, allegedly stumbled into a cave containing stones engraved with likenesses of Roman-era persons. Near Eastern mythological scenes Egyptian hieroglyphics, and North Semitic texts, and Carthaginian ships and symbols, etc. Although these objects seem too good to be true, their sheer number, at least 1,000, argued on behalf of their ancient authenticity. Here, close examination of a single artifact from the collection sheds light on the entire Burroughs Cave controversy. So Burroughs Cave in Illinois, all you Illinois listeners out there. One of the largest of several Burroughs Cave mapstones presents an intricate view of the Mississippi River watershed from the Gulf of Mexico to the Great Lakes, with markings indicating extended exploration along the Tennessee River and the Ohio River, in one instance, exploration overland to Lake Michigan. So pre-Columbian artifact here, Tennessee River, that's where I went in Alabama, where I went to the mounds there in Florence, right there on the Tennessee River. They said those were from 100 AD or something like that, 100 B, or I don't remember what they said, but however they said, it's way older than that. Roughly in the triangle-like shape of Easter Island, the stone measures 7 by 12 inches and weighs approximately 4.5 pounds. Grooved lines appear to indicate rivers and lakes. A series of dots represent travel routes. Panels contain symbols and ancient writings. The outer edges of the stone have been altered, either to change its shape or to express symbolic information. 7 grooves are cut on the bottom side, and 3 are cut on the top. Although the majority of incised information is on the front side of the stone, a few symbols were adroitly carved on the back side. Without careful inspection, one can easily miss the human-made marks on the backside as they subtly merge with the natural marks on the stone. In fact, so blended in are these human-made marks that it appears the map maker intended them to be camouflaged. Except for 2 short parallel grooves on the backside. All the other man-made marks are dots. Because there are no incised lines suggesting landscape or waterways, the dots likely represent star constellations. 3 dots in a row close together probably signify the belt of Orion. And, of course, Moundville, where I went, all those mounds there were all aligned with Orion. From the Gulf area up the Mississippi River, 1 river is indicated to the west and 4 rivers indicated to the east. That to the west suggests the Missouri River, and the 4 rivers to the east in order from south to north are the Black River, the Ohio River, the Illinois River, and probably the Wisconsin River. On the north side of the indicated Ohio River, the Wabash River, and either the Scioto River or at Portsmouth or the Muskingum River at Marietta are shown, more than likely. The Scioto, south of the Ohio River, appear the Tennessee and Kanawha rivers, with the Monongahela River at the very end. 2 things stand out concerning the Great Lakes region on the map. First, the Great Lakes, along with the St. Lawrence River, are shown as a single body of water. Not to make too much of it, but geologists tell us that Lake Superior, Lake Michigan, and Lake Huron were one body of water until about 100 BC, when isostatic rebound raised the land and separated the lakes. Second, Isle Royale is clearly indicated on the map in the northern section of Lake Superior. The one body of water depiction can certainly be offered as supporting evidence for the age of the map. Likewise, the showing of Isle Royale, a graphic spot not well known by the general public, but a place highly important in prehistoric America, tilts the scales of debate toward the map's ancient authenticity. Certain marks suggest that the starting point of the map, and thus the beginning point for the explorers, is probably the Gulf of Mexico, rather than the more modernly logical choice, the St. Lawrence Seaway. For example, the dots, which seem to symbolize time travel measurements, begin at the Gulf and emanate north along what clearly represents the Mississippi River, east along the Ohio River, and south down the Tennessee River. Each dot may refer to the average distance one could expect to travel in one day or some other designated time period. Strangely, although there is a clearly marked gulf at the bottom of the map with the Mississippi River emptying into it, There is no indication of Lake Pontchartrain. Perhaps that might be expected if the base camp of the mapmaker explorers were located at the Gulf area rather than in the St. Lawrence area, and cartographers were merely attempting to show distances to and from their camp. For that purpose, just indicating the Gulf would be sufficient. It should, however, be pointed out that Lake Pontchartrain was formed sometime between 2000 BC and 600 BC. Again, more supporting evidence for the genuine antiquity of the map stone. Clearly, it does not show various landmarks, as is the case on some other Burroughs Cave map stones. Instead, our map stone under discussion is more concerned with the waterways and approximate distances between various points. There are 42 dots from the mouth of the Ohio River to what is apparently the present-day area of Pittsburgh, a distance of 981 miles, indicating average travel of a little more than 23 miles per day. Canoeing enthusiasts believe it is possible to travel 15 miles per day paddling upstream, more than 30 miles per day traveling downstream. Interestingly, an average of traveling both ways with and against the river current averages 22.5 miles per day. 18 dots run overland on the map stone from the north side of the Ohio River at the mouth of the Tennessee River to the west shore of Lake Huron, a distance of roughly 532 miles, averaging out to around 30 miles travel per day. That perhaps sounds excessive, especially if for someone walking along primitive trails. Right, but think about it. If you're tall, if we're talking about giants here, wouldn't they feasibly maybe be able to travel a little faster on foot? I would think so. It should be remembered, however, that the German army marched approximately 60 miles a day during the first year of their campaign in Russia. Soviet troops trying to keep ahead of the invaders had to travel even farther every day, this while carrying full military gear. Another map stone currently in the possession of John White depicts the Great Lakes area, but also somewhat less detailed is the area to the south. Compared to the 18 dots on the map stone under discussion, the John White counterpart shows 21 dots. On the White map stone, the dots start at a point south beside a horseshoe or igloo-like image and run north to Lake Huron. Lines of dots on both map stones appear to represent the same overland trail. In addition to the dots on the map stone, there are 7 panels containing script on the front side. One panel, however, appears to have been scratched in recent times, the depth being much shallower and the patina totally missing. The fresh-looking inscription might be an older inscription, recently scratched out, an unlikely assumption because of the lack of depth on the newer-looking inscription. Perhaps someone fairly recently scratched this mark here as a specific test for patina. The fresh inscription appears to have been scratched in with a pinhead. Clearly, all incisions on the stone were wrought with a metal instrument, probably made of iron. 7 panels contain from 3 to 11 letters or numbers. The inscriptions all taken together appear to include glyphs borrowed from Paleo-Hebrew, Phoenician, Etruscan, Greek, and Old British, so on. Yep, here we are. There's our boys again. It's just funny to me that none of these people from all these different articles can put together that they're all talking about the same goddamn people. You know, they put this is, I guess these are all articles from this magazine, you know, compiled into a book. But what I'm saying is, you have this magazine or whatever this is published in Ancient American Magazine or whatever. You have all these different writers that this book is made up of, and they're all talking about the same fucking race of people because that's what I found out from my research. But yet none of them seem to know that or care. They all seem to act like this is all separate things they're talking about here. That illusion of division is what's keeping everybody in this mind control camp they've got us in and had us in for so long. This mixture of letters on Burroughs Cave artifacts has caused several researchers to throw up their hands and condemn the entire collection as an obvious fraud perpetrated by amateur foragers who just flung together a hodgepodge of ancient ideograms and symbols from different cultures to form meaningless groupings. Right. Oh, it's fake, it's fake, it's fake. Yeah. As soon as, it has Paleo, Hebrew, and Phoenician, it's fake. That's all over the place in America. All over the place. If, however, all these alphabets come from a mother tongue, and if the mother tongue rather than any one of the recognized groups is what is being used, We should expect nothing less than a mixture, especially if one is not familiar with that mother tongue. Any language derived from a mother tongue would preserve elements from its original source and, at the same time, develop entirely new elements of its own. Along these lines, researchers would do well to familiarize themselves with the works of Welsh historians Alan Wilson and Baron Blackett. They argue convincingly that the mother tongue of all those languages mentioned is Colburn, the alphabet of the ancient Cymry, also known as the Cymry, and ancestors of the Welsh people. Colburn has been widely discredited as the invention of Edward Williams, who was said to have created the alphabet in the early 19th century. Most scholars still accept that pronouncement, along with the conviction that Williams was a proven forger. All this in spite of manuscripts written in Colburn centuries before Williams' lifetime are extant. Moreover, copies of some of his so-called forged manuscripts predate a time before he was even born. Now, that's interesting, isn't it? They associate all these alleged forged manuscripts with this guy. He even claims to have forged them, but yet when they go back and they actually do some testing on his forged tablets, they predate to before he was even born. Now tell me that's not a fucking cover-up. You got guys that are, I mean, see, that's another classic case of somebody who's just willing to be a patsy. Colburn possibly forms revealing connections between our Burroughs Cave mapstone and other allegedly forged inscribed stones, specifically West Virginia's Grave Creek tablet, the Back Creek stone of Tennessee, and Mexico's Los Lunas boulder. All these lithic artifacts have something in common other than their dismissal as frauds by mainstream archaeologists. They share some common ancient alphabetical letters. For example, the mapstone repeats 2 incised small parallel lines 5 times on the front side and 1 time on the back side. Although they were overlooked for years as part of the inscription on the Back Creek stone, an identical set of parallel lines also occurs there. According to Alan Wilson, these 2 short lines represent the Cymric word Dwy, D-W-Y, which means the ruler. The Back Creek stone and this mapstone also have at least 2 other letters in common. The Burroughs Cave mapstone also shares letters from the Grave Creek stone, at least 5, and the Los Lunas stone, at least 7. The Los Lunas stone was long condemned by conventional scholars as bearing a contrived alphabet until the discovery of the Tel Dan stelae between 1993 and 1994 in northern Israel by a team of researchers and workers led by Israeli archaeologist Avram Baran. The language on the Tel Dan stelae, now confidently dated to around 900 to 800 BC, is virtually identical to that on the Los Lunas stone. Several, at least 7 of the Tel Dan stelae are also identical with those on the Burroughs Cave mapstone. Another inscribed artifact, less regarded as fraudulent than ignored, that shares some common letters with the mapstone is the Brandenburg stone. Now housed in the Charlestown, Indiana Public Library, the Brandenburg stone was found in Paradise Bottoms near Brandenburg, Kentucky, nearly 100 years ago. Using the Colburn alphabet, Alan Wilson translates the inscription on the Brandenburg stone as, "Towards strength, to promote unity, divide the land, we are spread over purely between offspring and wisdom." If the mapstone is genuine, it has much to relate regarding the unknown ancient explorers of our continent during prehistory. Certainly, many unresolved questions remain concerning Burroughs Cave. Even so, to ignore totally its artifacts and to dismiss them all out of hand without further study does irreparable damage to legitimate scholarship. Even if every single stone of the existing hundreds of thousands of them is a fraud, we need to solve the mystery as to how such a massive hoax, perhaps the greatest of our time, could have been accomplished and by whom. If, however, the stone artifacts are real, what a great tragedy it would be to simply yell fraud and lose them to oblivion. And yes, that is what they hope. So, the end of Chapter 11, we'll pick up on Chapter 12 next time. Quick short show for you here tonight, but hey, we burned through a lot of that book. That's a good thing. Lots of interesting stuff there, and lots of more stuff for you to check out and research and look into on in your own free time as well. TheGlobalReality.com is my website. TheGlobalReality.com is my website. We really do need some donations. We haven't got much in this week. Help out those other people who are helping out there, and please make a donation this week and help us out. It's been slim. We had a couple of people who are normal donators on the monthly subscription thing. Their payments didn't go through for some reason. So, yeah, we definitely need your support. Next week's our fundraising week, and we're going to have 600 by Thursday. So definitely bear that in mind and help us out. My name is Josh Reeves. I love each and every one of you. We'll see you next time. Have a nice Memorial Day weekend. Take care.